Don't close your eyes, Eleanor. Not now. Not ever. Those were the first words Kendra heard before the rest came crashing down like glass. You people were never meant to make it. Be grateful we even allowed you through the door. Vice Dean Doris Hawthorne. Didn't he simply speak the words? She carved them into the room before ripping Kendra Morless scholarship papers in half, shredding 4 years of sacrifice with a single, careless motion. The tearing of the document stung deeper than her insults ever could. Kendra stood frozen in that polished office lined with expensive wood paneling, still wearing the neatly pressed navy jacket her mother had found on sale at the church thrift store. Her fingers trembled as the shredded pieces of her future tumbled to the floor like funeral confetti. Security waited behind her, arms crossed, ready to escort her out, as if she were a threat rather than a student. Outside, the October wind clawed down the broken sidewalks of New Orleans. Her phone buzzed again. Final notice. 3 days until tuition is due. Her bank account held $38. No appeals. No backup. Only humiliation. Clear out your locker, Hawthorne said with a smug smile. And Dunty wadi wialal, make sure no one else tries your little hero stunt. Hero stunt. Hero stunt. That's what they called it. 3 days earlier, Kendra had missed her pre-med final because she was kneeling on the pavement beside a bleeding stranger pressing her hands to a woman's shattered skull with no camera, no supervision, only instinct, fear, and the voice of a 911 operator guiding her through the chaos. The woman lived, but Kendra's scholarship died in that office until a helicopter landed in her neighborhood, its blades kicking up dust in disbelief. And the woman she had saved stepped out. If this already feels like the type of black story that deserves to be told, then you're exactly where you need to be. This is Hidden Worth, and today, we're sharing what happens when the world tries to erase a young woman like Kendra, and fails spectacularly. Because this isn't just a story about cruelty, it is the story of how a single act of compassion shook an entire institution, and how the girl they tried to silence became the spark of a national reckoning. Kendra Morrill never grew up dreaming of being a hero. She lived on the second floor above a rundown laundromat in New Orleans, 9th Ward. The smell of fried catfish mixed with damp concrete clung to every shirt she owned and every childhood memory she carried. Her mother, Laverne Morrell, waited tables for 16-hour shifts, scraping together $6 tips, working without insurance, and pushing through pain because missing a day wasn't an option. Yet every night, no matter how exhausted she was, Laverne sat beside Kendra's bed, massaging her feet and whispering, "You won't live the life I lived, baby. No aprons for you. One day, you'll wear a white coat." And Kendra believed her. With every free lunch line she stood in, with every time the lights went out and they played pretend under candle glow, she held on to that dream. She had no new clothes, but she had straight A's. No car, but a clear vision to become the first doctor in her family. Someone respected, someone capable of saving women like her mother. She remembered Laverne coughing blood into a paper towel and hiding it like a crime. She remembered the fear of clinic bills. And she remembered the night her mother collapsed behind the diner, sending her to the ICU for 3 terrifying days. The medical bill was more than their yearly income. That was the moment Kendra promised herself and every unseen woman like her mother that she would become a doctor no matter what it cost. That fire carried her all the way to Midtown Ivy University, where she arrived in thrift store cardigans and maintained a flawless GPA among wealthy students with legacy admissions and designer backpacks. She never fit in, but she always stood out. She sent half her paychecks home. She mentored struggling black freshmen, and before every exam, she called her mom for strength. Until the morning she didn't make it to class. The morning she chose something else. The morning she stopped in the street. Thursday started with an alarm and a whispered prayer. Kendra's phone buzzed at 6:17 a.m. Her final exam foundations of emergency medicine started at 8 o'clock sharp. No late entries, no reschedules, no excuses. She got out of bed in her tiny dorm room with her stomach knotted. Her roommate Destiny was probably already at the library. Kendra ironed her scrubs with a borrowed flat iron, repeating anatomy terms under her breath like a survival chant. Passing this last exam meant keeping her $25,000 scholarship. Failing meant losing everything. There was no plan B. She grabbed a granola bar, kissed the taped-up picture of her and her mom on the wall, and whispered, "This one's for you." Outside, The October air cut through her hoodie like a warning. New Orleans weather could switch moods in seconds. Yesterday's summer. Today, a cold bite. She wrapped her thrifted hoodie tighter and hurried toward the bus stop 3 blocks away. Her breath shook when she checked the time. 7:31 a.m. The Route 14 bus rolled toward her, and that was when she saw the woman. The woman mid-50s, at most pale-skinned, dressed in a tailored blazer and expensive leather boots, collapsed near the curb outside a corner pharmacy. Her body twisted unnaturally, and a dark pool of blood spread beneath her head, soaking into the concrete. Her shattered iPhone lay beside her like a fractured mirror. People noticed and kept moving. A man in a suit slowed, stared for a heartbeat, and then turned away as if the scene might stain him. A jogger briefly glanced over, then raised the volume on her headphones and sprinted past. Kendra froze, just for half a second, split between the ticking clock and the injured stranger. The bus pulled up, the doors opened. The driver looked at her. "You getting on?" Kendra didn't move. The woman's lips trembled, barely a whisper, but enough. "Please, help." That single plea decided everything. Kendra dropped her backpack and knelt beside her. The nursing training she'd practiced for years snapping into place despite the chaos pounding in her chest. "Ma'am, can you hear me? If you can hear me, blink. Pulse. Weak. Pupils. Sluggish. Skin. Cold and damp. Concerning signs. Dangerous signs. Could be a brain bleed. Could be a spinal injury. This was no simple fall." Kendra dialed 911, forcing her fear deep down so her voice stayed level. "This is Kendra Morrow, nursing student. I have an unconscious woman with a possible head trauma. Heavy bleeding and signs of shock. Corner of Canal and Dauphine. Please send help immediately. EMZTA. 4 minutes," the dispatcher replied. 4 minutes could be everything. 4 minutes could be the line between life and death. Kendra steadied the woman's head to prevent further spinal damage, pressing her scarf firmly against the wound. "Stay with me. Stay with me. Don't close your eyes. You hear me? Don't you dare close your eyes." Her phone rang 7:37 a.m. The bus pulled away. Kendra didn't even glance at it. By 7:43, the ambulance came roaring down Canal Street. Paramedics rushed out, and Kendra stepped back only when they instructed her to move. Her hands were stained with dried blood. Her scrubs were streaked with dirt. Her backpack still lay abandoned in the walkway. But the woman, the one whose life she had fought for, was breathing steadily now. Stabilized. Conscious enough to respond. Rodriguez, the lead paramedic, paused before climbing inside. "You a med student?" Kendra nodded weakly. "Nursing." He studied her, eyes narrowing with something like respect. "You probably saved this woman's life. 10 more minutes. We would have called the morgue." And then they were gone. Kendra remained alone on the sidewalk. No applause. No cameras. No acknowledgement. Only blood drying on her arms and a cold October wind cutting through her hoodie. She checked her phone. Las 7:51 alto. M. Her heart dropped. Kendra ran 10 blocks, her lungs burning, the pavement slick beneath her shoes. She dashed up the front steps of Midtown Ivy, past the founderess marble statue, through the echoing lobby, and up to the 4th floor. Room 412. The door was locked. Through the window, she could see her classmates already bent over their papers, pens scratching quietly. Professor Martin glanced toward the door, saw her, and looked down again to continue marking attendance. Kendra knocked. Hard. When that didn't work, she knocked louder. The door cracked open 2 inches. "Is this Kendra Morel?" the professor asked flatly. "Yes. There was an emergency." "You're late. Our policy is strict. No late entry." The exam began at 8 a.m. exactly, but I was helping a woman who was injured. She was bleeding here. "I have a statement from the EMTs." I'm sorry you chose that, he replied, unmoved. The rules apply to everyone. The door clicked shut. And in that moment, Kendra understood. Her exam was gone. Her grade was gone. And without the exam, her GPA fell below the threshold. That night, the email arrived. Subject: termination of financial aid. Your Presidential Opportunity Scholarship is now invalid due to failure to meet academic standards. Outstanding balance: $24,875 deadline. 5 days. Her stomach dropped. Another notification: GPA update, 2.89, another. Unpaid tuition may affect dormitory eligibility. Each alert swiped away another piece of her future because she had chosen to help someone who couldn't help herself. By Friday morning, Kendra walked into the Office of Academic Affairs wearing the same scrubs she'd worn during the emergency. Duguassed faint stains still clung stubbornly to the fabric-silent proof of what she'd done. She carried a folder containing EMT reports, her formal petition, and screenshots of emails from students who had been granted makeup exams in the past. Most were white. All were male. Maybe this time someone would listen. Maybe someone would care. Hope lasted only seconds. By Steendor's Hawthorne didn't even raise her eyes when Kendra entered. The office was pristine mahogany furniture, soft lighting, the quiet hum of privilege wrapped in authority. "You have 3 minutes, Hawthorne said, folding her hands as Kendra sat. Kendra placed the documents on the desk. I wasn't late because I overslept. I wasn't irresponsible. I was helping save a woman's life. The paramedic said I kept her stable until the policy," Hawthorne cut in sharply, "does not consider intentions. Only actions. And your action, Miss Morrow, was to miss your exam." Kendra swallowed. "But other students have been allowed to reschedule. Those were different circumstances," Hawthorne replied. "What kind?" Kendra asked softly. Kendra kept her tone firm as she spoke. "I personally know 2 white students who missed their exams last semester. One skipped out for a family vacation. The other claimed he got a flat tire. Both of them were given makeup tests. I have the proof, right? Here, screenshots." "That isn't relevant," Hawthorne replied with icy detachment. "We evaluate each case individually." "But you didn't evaluate mine," Kendra pushed back, her voice trembling only slightly. "You denied my petition in under 5 minutes. You never even looked at it." Hawthorne's expression hardened. "This meeting is finished." Without breaking eye contact, she picked up the appeal packet, tore the paperwork straight down the center, and let the pieces drift into the trash can beside her desk. "You people were never meant to succeed," she muttered, barely above a whisper. "You should be thankful we admitted you at all." The words struck harder than the rejection. Kendra stood abruptly, her pulse pounding and her throat thick with humiliation and fury. "Don't waste your time appealing again," Hawthorne added as Kendra moved toward the exit. "Miss Morrill, the institution has already been more generous with you than you deserved. Don't push your luck." The hallway outside was empty and quiet. Kendra leaned against the wall, her hands trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't just that she felt unseen, it was that she felt unwanted, like everything she had sacrificed meant nothing. For the first time, she questioned the promises she had clung to her whole life, the belief that working twice as hard would protect her, that straight A's and sleepless nights would shield her from bias, that merit alone could overpower prejudice. It had all been a story she'd been told, until the moment the system no longer needed her. By Saturday night, Kendra felt like a fading shadow. Her dorm access had been revoked. She had 7 days to clear out. No extensions, no exceptions. She spent the night sleeping on Destiny's floor, curled inside a sleeping bag beside stacks of textbooks in a mountain of disappointment. By Sunday morning, she was back in New Orleans. Back home, or what was left of home. Nothing in her mother's apartment had changed. The peeling ceiling paint, the one stove burner that still worked, the windows sealed with duct tape, the wheezing air conditioner that sounded like it was gasping its last breath. Laverne was too exhausted to question why her daughter had returned in the middle of She sat in her worn recliner wrapped in 3 blankets. Kendra stayed silent. How could she tell the woman who had sacrificed 2 decades scrubbing tables that the dream she'd built for both of them had been torn to shreds? She cleaned the apartment, cooked dinner, and pretended the visit was casual normal even though her chest felt tight all day. Around 6:45 p.m., something unusual happened. The air seemed to change, not the weather, but the sound. A deep, rhythmic thumping rolled across the neighborhood, louder than a train, heavier than thunder. No one on the block had ever heard something like it from so close. The sky above her mother's building seemed to pulse. Then a sleek black helicopter descended like a dark shadow falling across the rooftops. The rotas sliced the air violently, sending grocery bags flying and loose papers spiraling across the courtyard. Neighbors poured outside with their phones raised, shielding their eyes. Mrs. Green from 4B made the sign of the cross. "That's not a news chopper," she whispered. Kendra stepped outside, her heartbeat skipping wildly, unsure if she was awake or dreaming. The helicopter touched down on the empty basketball court behind the building. Dust and tiny bits of glass swirled into the air. Then the door swung open. A woman stepped out, light blonde hair, neat but subdued. A long gray coat pulled tight around her. A bandage wrapped around the left side of her forehead. It was Air, the woman from the sidewalk the stranger Kendra had saved. Behind her was a tall man in a tailored suit holding a briefcase. Another woman in dark sunglasses and an earpiece scanned the area, clearly security. The blonde woman locked eyes with Kendra. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but it carried through the wind like a blade. Kendra Morrill. Kendra's breath caught. "Why, yes. My name is Eleanor Crest," the woman said. "We need to talk." And just like that, everything shifted again. Minutes later, they were all seated inside Kendra's modest living room. 2 mismatched chairs, a folding table, a sagging couch that sank a little more every year. But Eleanor Crest didn't seem to care about the chipped paint or the flickering light bulbs. Even when a bus roared past and rattled the window panes, she didn't flinch. She simply crossed her legs and murmured, "You saved my life, and now I intend to save yours." Kendra couldn't speak. Her throat felt raw. Laverne sat nearby, clutching a chipped mug of tea like it was a shield. The man with the briefcase cleared his throat. "James Sullivan," he introduced himself. "I'm Mrs. Crest's attorney. We're here because we know what happened to you and because we intend to take action." Kendra blinked in confusion. "Wait. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post anything. I didn't tell a soul what happened." Eleanor leaned forward gently. "You didn't need to. The EMTs documented your name. A nurse recognized your voice. And when I woke up, I demanded to know who stayed with me, who refused to walk past. Everyone gave the same answer." She paused. "You." Kendra looked from Eleanor to her mother, completely overwhelmed. "But why me?" "You could have walked away," Eleanor said softly, drawing in a slow breath. Her tone was steady, but beneath it lived something Ropain that hadn't healed. "Believe me, I understand what it means to feel invisible. Before I married into the Crest family, I was just the daughter of a nurse. Grew up in Memphis with a single mom who worked herself numb every day. Same reality you've lived. But when I married Daniel, my whole identity was replaced. I wasn't Eleanor anymore. I became decoration, something to stand beside him in photographs." She paused, her jaw tightening. "For 20 years, I've sat in rooms with people just like your vice dean. People who smile at fundraisers but quietly suffocate young students behind closed doors. I've donated, sponsored programs, funded scholarships, and nothing actually changed." Eleanor pointed to the leather bag beside her. "So this time, I'm not donating. I'm fighting." Kendra sank deeper into her seat, her mind spinning. Eleanor wasn't just the wife of some wealthy executive. She was married to Daniel Crest, the CEO of Crest Global, one of the largest healthcare corporations in the country. A woman who had the power to call senators, journalists, college boards, anyone she wanted. A woman who had once stayed silent because silence was easier. Until Kendra held her hand on that sidewalk. Kendra hadn't realized it then, but that single act had jolted something awake in Eleanor. "I'm not here to hand you pity or charity," Eleanor said, her voice suddenly sharp. "I need something from you." Kendra blinked. "Permission for what?" Elena met her eyes without flinching. "To burn the entire system down. By Tuesday, Kendra found herself inside a downtown law office. The AC hummed quietly. The carpet was thick enough to swallow footsteps, and the bottled water cost more than dinner back home. Eleanor sat to her left, James Salavanda. Loyasat. To her right, they opened a laptop and projected files onto a large screen. What appeared made Kendra's stomach twist. Rows of spreadsheets, dozens of names, dates, GPA lists, appeal forms, denials, approvals, patterns. Sullivan tapped a chart with his pen. In the past 5 years, Midtown Ivy received 104 petitions for emergency academic accommodations. 68 were rejected. Kendra frowned. That's more than half. He nodded grimly. And here's where the numbers turn ugly. Of those 68 denials, 55 belonged to students of color, mostly black and Latina women. Kendra swallowed hard. What about the white students? Eleanor leaned back. Most of them faced similar issues: scars breaking down, family emergencies, unexpected illnesses. But instead of filling out a form, the instructors handled it quietly. Quick makeup exam. A phone call. A favor. No paper trail. Next, Sullivan opened audio files, secretly recorded meetings. Hawthorne's voice echoed through the speakers. We can tee open the floodgates just because someone comes in with a sob story. Laughter followed. Another staff member scoffed. If we approve her, next thing you know, every student with a GoFundMe will show up crying Mortichukalis. Kendra's throat tightened. She recognized so many of the named students who had quietly disappeared mid-semester. Girls who confided that they couldn't afford one more setback. Guys who swore they'd tried everything. Why didn't anyone speak up? Kendra whispered. Eleanor sighed. Because students don't have power. And the ones who do, they're never the ones being crushed. There were also meeting minutes showing professors begging for compassion only to be ignored. Emails from Hawthorne warning about setting precedent for minority students. Sullivan switched to the final slide. This isn't one bad judgment call. This is a structure, a system, a case, a lawsuit. Kendra asked. Eleanor nodded slowly. If you want one, but we're thinking even bigger. Kendra frowned. Bigger than a lawsuit? We go public, Eleanor said. Not just your experience, all of it. Every number, every recording, every voice. We show the world exactly what happens when a black girl chooses kindness. In a world determined to punish her for it. Kendra stared at the evidence, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. It wasn't just about her anymore. It never had been. By Thursday morning, Midtown Ivy woke up to chaos, not fire and violence, but cameras, microphones, reporters, and a truth too large to bury. Eleanor's team rolled out the plan with military precision. Local news got it first, then regional stations, then national headlines. By 10 a.m., the administration building was surrounded by journalists. Is it true a student was punished for saving a woman's life? Why are denial rates significantly higher for students of color? Kendra's name spread everywhere, not as a dropout, not as a problem, but as a young woman who had done something extraordinary. At the press conference, Eleanor stood beside her, hair pulled back, bandage still visible. Behind them, a large screen displayed charts, statistics, and audio evidence. No filters, no redacted lines. Just the truth. Every major network ran the same headline. Nursing student denied future after saving billionaire's wife. Kendra stepped up to the microphone, hands shaking slightly. I didn't stop that morning because I thought it would change anything for me, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. I stopped because helping someone in danger is supposed to matter. I believed that's what this school taught us. She looked out over the silent courtyard. But when I asked for help in return, I was told I should VA made a different choice, that my future wasn't worth her life. She paused, the crowd holding still. This wasn't just unfair. It was reckless. And social media. Within hours, hashtags were trending. Hashtag justice for Kendra. Hashtag black excellence denied. Hashtag Midtown Ivy exposed. TikToks went viral, spreading stories from students who had once walked the halls. Some who had dropped out, Others who switched majors just to avoid the same fate. Kendra's inbox overflowed. Messages came from students, nurses, and viewers who had seen her story online. Some were kind, uplifting, and full of gratitude. Others were cruel, dismissive, and full of blame. She wanted to respond, to defend herself. But Eleanor advised caution. When you challenge the powerful, she warned, they strike back. Be steady. Be heard, but don't lose yourself. By the next morning, protests were erupting across the campus. Students of all backgrounds, not just students of color, joined in. Professors added their voices to the chorus calling for accountability. Apologies. Chinju was no longer invisible, she was unavoidable, and Midtown Ivy had a choice. Double down or confront the fire they had ignited. When Kendra returned to campus on Monday, she wasn't just a student, she was a force. The administration had remained silent since the media storm, offering no public statements, no apologies, only quiet attempts at damage control. Eleanor had warned her, they're regrouping. They want to make this disappear quietly. Kendra's phone buzzed at 8:15 a.m. An email from Midtown Ivy. Subject line: Review of academic standards required. No explanation. No warning. Eleanor was out of town, Sullivan in court, and Kendra was without legal representation. Still, she went. Room 203 in the administration wing wasn't a meeting room, it was a courtroom. 5 faculty members, 2 administrators, a university lawyer, and at the center, Vice Dean Doris Hawthorne.com and Razor. This is a formal review of Miss Morell's academic record and conduct, Hawthorne stated. Kendra blinked. I thought this was about my appeal. Hawthorne cut her off. This is about your adherence to institutional rules. We're assessing whether you fit the culture and expectations of this school. Her record was presented like a weapon. Every small misstep over 4 years had been magnified, reframed, and weaponized. A late assignment became habitual negligence. A class question on racial disparities in healthcare was labeled disruptive and politically motivated. A sophomore year parking ticket turned into a pattern of defiance. Every detail was intended to portray her as unstable, emotional, ungrateful, but Kendra stayed silent. Her jaw clenched, nails digging into her palms. Then the committee made an offer. One option, a member said, is to withdraw voluntarily. Your record will be marked as personal reasons. Clean. You leave quietly. Move on. And if I refuse? Kendra asked, voice steady. We will proceed with formal expulsion on grounds of misconduct, Hawthorne said. This will follow you indefinitely. Kendra rose slowly, locking eyes with them. You tried to ruin my future once. Now you're trying to bury me completely. I hope you brought shovels. Her voice was quiet, but every word cut through the room. She stepped into the hallway, head high, hands trembling slightly. Waiting there was a Channel 9 news crew. This time, she wasn't alone. By Tuesday, Kendra's story had transformed from a headline into a movement. Students staged sit-ins in the main quad. Faculty wore black ribbons in solidarity. Alumni threatened to withdraw donations. Hospital colleagues started asking questions. Why was a top nursing student being expelled after saving a life? That afternoon, Eleanor returned not quietly. She and her legal team entered the boardroom carrying a full media package and a petition signed by 22 public figures, including doctors, civil rights attorneys, and 2 sitting congresswomen. We have evidence? We have the recordings, Eleanor said. We have the stories, and now the nation is paying attention. The board convened an emergency session. Kendra sat between Sullivan and Destiny, her roommate turned activist, who now understood the ins and outs of university policy better than some of the attorneys in the room. Dean Hawthorne was absent, reportedly on administrative leave, pending the investigation. President Holloway, visibly shaken, opened the hearing. We are here to determine a solution, he said. Kendra stood. No notes. No lawyer speaking for her. I didn't want to be in the middle of this, she began, voice steady. But I couldn't ignore someone who needed help. And if your school punishes compassion, then you are not teaching. Leadership you are. Teaching silence. She scanned the room. You tried to erase me, but the world showed up. Now, what are you going to do about it? A hand rose. It was Lena Harris, a retired surgeon and one of the few black women on the board. I move to fully reinstate Miss Morel's scholarship. Remove any disciplinary marks from her record and issue a public apology, she said firmly. The second vote came immediately. Unanimous, and the moment it passed, cheers erupted in the hallway outside the meeting room. The following news conference was brief but unmistakable. President Holloway took the microphone, voice strained but clear. Miss Kendra Morel's full scholarship has been reinstated. Additionally, we have committed to an independent review of all emergency academic denials over the past 5 years. Kendra didn't smile for the cameras. She was back in her mother's apartment, perched on the sagging couch, when the official email arrived. Welcome back, Kendra Morel. That was the moment the tears began, and T stopped for some time. 6 months later, Kendra walked across the stage to receive her diploma from Midtown Ivy University. Under her graduation gown, she wore the same neatly ironed scrubs she had on the day that nearly cost her everything, a quiet tribute to the moment that defined her courage. Hair pulled back, chin high, she heard her name called. The room held a pause, a subtle shift in the air, as the audience stood. Not for her grades, not for her perfect attendance, not even for her hours in the clinic, but because she had become something greater than a student. She had become a symbol. The university announced sweeping reforms in the wake of public apologies. A new office dedicated to student advocacy, mandatory anti-bias, and racial equity training for faculty, and the creation of the Compassionate Response Protocol. The policy guarantees that any student who assists in life-threatening or medical emergencies will be allowed to complete their exams without penalty. The ripple effect didn't end there. Within 3 months, 6 additional colleges adopted similar policies. By the year's end, 15 institutions, stretching from New York to San Francisco, had implemented comparable safeguards. Legislators proposed laws inspired by Kendra's story, including one officially named the Student Good Samaritan Act. And it all began with one decision on a chilly morning. A girl choosing not to walk past someone in need. Eleanor Chris didn't return quietly to her philanthropic life. She left her husband's foundation and started a new organization. The Moral Initiative, designed to provide scholarships and legal support for underrepresented students facing retaliation. At lunch, Kendra sat at the head of the table. Eleanor told the board, "Every vote counts. No seats are bought. Everyone earned their place." Destiny, now a first-year law student, oversaw case reviews, and one of the EMTs from that morning joined as well. It wasn't just a foundation, it was a force. Kendra. She passed her licensure exam and joined the ER residency program at Crescent City Medical Center. Every trauma patient, every bleeding wound, every frightened stranger reminded her of the system that had tried to push her aside and of how she had proven it wrong. People still recognize her in supermarkets, on buses, online. "Are you that girl?" they ask. She never says yes or no. She just smiles, because this was never about being a hero. It was about stopping, about refusing to ignore someone in need, trusting that someone else will do the same for you someday. And if you're watching this unfold, remember, the world doesn't change all at once. Change begins when one person decides to stop walking, when they choose bravery over comfort, action over apathy. Kendra didn't have the right clothes, the right background, or wealth, or power. All she had was the courage to pause, and that one act changed everything. For Eleanor, for herself, and for hundreds of students who would follow. You may never land a helicopter in someone's yard. You may never speak before cameras or influence a nation. But you will face moments where you must choose between comfort and courage, between inaction and decisive action. When that moment comes, be the one who stops. One act of kindness, one refusal to look away, can ripple farther than you ever imagined. This is Hiddenworth. If this story moved you, subscribe, share, and leave a comment below. When was the last time you decided to stop? We'll be here, ready to share the next story that needs to be told.